I digress. Good afternoon, everyone. Go ahead, Kim.
Good afternoon, as John said. I'm super excited about this topic because I actually had my staff say, I said, stop. We're going to save this conversation for this afternoon because we were having some intensive conversations. And I'm also really excited because Karen Tollefson, who is a GED teacher out of our Mitchell office, is our moderator today. And our chat monitor is going to be Debbie Skokan, who is an ESL instructor out of Yankton. And ladies, I'm going to let you take it away.
It should be fun. Tongue in cheek. So yes, like Kim was saying, we were having this really enlightening conversation this morning, and she said, "Stop. Let's carry it on for T3." So basically, in the topic was, Susan said, "How do I get my students who are tired because they're working hard and they come to class and they're exhausted? They put in a hard day of work. How do we get them energized? How do we wake them up and get them active?" So that was her question. So that's what I'm posing to you guys. What do you have for ideas, or how do you get your students energized and get them involved and get their energy levels up so they can participate in class? Maybe activities or games or what? And yes, I talk with my hands. Anybody?
Well, to get the ball rolling, one of the things that I shared this morning was something that I use sometimes with my GED students, and also something I used to use with my high school students, which is Kahoot. And that's always a fun interactive activity. There's a little bit of a learning curve to getting an account set up and learning how to navigate it from the teacher side of things. But once you teach the students how to use it, it's not, they think it's fun. I've always had good feedback on Kahoot when I've used it. I've not used it with my English class. I've used it with my evening reading and social studies GED class, but I think it's something that could very well be adapted and used in an English language acquisition class as well. And Kim put the link down there in the chat.
Jeremy, what kind of activities because I looked at it this morning and I was like, oh, I've got to log in and do this. And I honestly, I didn't want to take the time, I admit it. What kind of activities do they do?
So there are it's an interactive game, and I think there are multiple ways to set it up. They've really beefed it up over the years, but to admit, I use it basically the basic Kahoot, which is it'll flash up multiple choice questions, and then from the student side of things, they can use their phone or another device to select which one they think is the right answer. They get bonus points for answering faster and things like that. So it's not something I would ever use as a formal assessment, but it's fun, especially for students who might feel a little bit more competitive than I do. Sometimes I'm not really a naturally competitive person, and so but I try to use a variety of activities that appeal to all of my students, and that's something that I've found, some of them will really get into it, like if they're ahead and so on, and others don't care so much, but for the most part, they all participate, but yeah, it's just it's a game. I mean, it would be similar to something that you might see on a game show or something like that. It even has its own theme music, you know, when it's counting down. And but one thing that you do want to pay attention to though is, and this is when I first started using it, I would always just kind of use the default time. But you can set it so that it gives longer amount of time for the students to respond, or a shorter amount of time, or however you want to do it, or unlimited time. So there's a lot of, you know, there are a lot of different options that you can tweak in there. And I know that they have other formats of the game. Maybe someone else who uses Kahoot can chime in, because I'm mostly just familiar with the basic Kahoot like it was when it first started. But this another nice thing about Kahoot is the students don't need to sign up for an account. And that's often a barrier to some of the tools that I like to use in class, but it requires them to sign up for an account. And I don't want to ask them to create, you know, 15 accounts. But this one, they just put in kahoot.it. The code is up on the screen. They type in the code, create a nickname for themselves, or you can choose to have Kahoot automatically assign them a nickname, which prevents inappropriate nicknames, which probably isn't, you know, as much an issue for adult education, but it certainly was in high school. And yeah, there's a lot of different options. I hope I'm describing it well. Look, you know, there are a ton of YouTube videos too about how to use it. If it's something that interests you, honestly, it's one of those things that it'll make more sense if you actually see it in action than for me to describe it.
Yeah,
Jeremy.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, I get this, and even as I was thinking about this T3, like sharing screen, like I would like to see what you are actually talking about. If you, I don't know if you're able to share your screen or if you're able to show, because I would like to show what I do with my warm up. But before that, Jeremy, if you're able to share your screen, if you're show us what you're talking about.
You have the ability to share screen.
Okay, I can try.
And as Jeremy's configuring his screens, you know, I pose this rhetorically, or maybe we can get into that when we talk about the gamification of education, and specifically adult education, right? I know there are probably a lot of talking points about student engagement, retention of whatever it is, vocabulary or terms or dates, ideas, etc. But I'd also like us to be thinking about improper adult methodology, wanting to build collaboration, as well as understand competition and that gamification aspects. What considerations should we, of which should we be mindful? Anyway, thank you, Jeremy. Go ahead.
So this is what it looks like in my account. And one thing, they're always trying to sell the premium, and I don't know how big your classes are, but the free version is all I've ever needed for this, for my adult education classes. This is one that I had created that I was going to use at my summer summit presentation, but I didn't have time. So if it has all of these questions in there. I'll pretend that I'm
in
gonna go
just a
ahead and
moment,
edit it.
Jeremy. I teach on Zoom all the time. So that screen is very, very small. So I don't know if you can zoom in or enlarge the screen for us to see?
On mine, it's huge.
Mine is huge too.
Yeah, that shouldn't, you should be
well,
seeing the
Maybe,
normal
maybe it's just
screen.
my eyesight. I have very poor eyesight.
It's taking up my whole monitor, so I don't know what. But so when you go into this is one that now let's see, what was I saying? Okay, so when you go in to edit, you know, you just put like, which one is this looks weird to me though. Oh yeah, okay, here's an example. So here's a question, right? What kinds of information can make up a digital footprint? And here are the answers. And in this case, you know, there are the answer is both. So over here, you can set up the time limit for, and this is per question. So if you want to give longer periods of time for certain questions or whatever, you can do it there. There are different types of questions. So most of the time I use, like I said, I'm certainly not an expert. I normally use just the multiple choice quiz
Mhm.
type, but there's also a true and false. There's type and answer. There's a puzzle, which I haven't done. And there are even poll options. Now, some of these have a star by them, so I'm thinking those are probably premium, but I'm not sure. Like I said, I mostly just use the quiz. That's all I've ever used. And you know, you can give double points to certain hard questions if you want to. So setting it up, you know, it's a little bit of work up front. This one, I should have actually edited the title, but it's the Declaration of Independence. That's one I've used in my reading and social studies. And I just copied someone else's. You can make a copy of someone else's. And then I went in and edited it the way that I wanted it. So if you, when you click start, so now I can choose like how I want to do it. And like I said, I've only ever used classic mode.
Okay.
I think team mode, I don't know what that is. Maybe you can have multiple people on a team. I'd have to look into that. My classes aren't really big enough for team mode per se. And I think, you know, especially doing it on Zoom, I don't know that I would use team mode because they're all at home. I don't know, maybe I can, but I've only ever used classic. So then once you go there, once you select the style of game that you want, it'll come up like this, and then they just have to go to kahoot.it, or they can scan this QR code. They enter this number, okay, and then their name will appear on the screen. So I'll show you. I'll grab my phone, or if you want to try it, you can. I'm not going to show the whole Kahoot, obviously,
Mhm.
but you go to kahoot.it. So I see Kim's in there. So then once we start, once you feel confident that everybody's in who's gonna play, then you can click start, and I'll just show you one question. So actually, this is a true or false. True or false, your digital footprint is all online information about you that only you post.
False.
So then see what it does. It'll show like how many people. So it doesn't show so then it has a leaderboard right here. So apparently I answered fastest, so I'm on top. And I'm not entirely clear on how it calculates points, but you get more points if you answer faster. And then when you get all the way to the end, it has a podium, and then it has an option that you can review if you want to, and go through the questions so that they can get the right answers. So it's a pretty cool thing. Like I said, I'm not going to go through the whole thing
No.
right now. Let's see if I can exit this Kahoot. Actually, just close it. So that's how that works. And like I said, it's nice. And if I go to Discover, so you can find, Kahoots on any topics. If we look up foods, it's going to have a ton of them on foods. You might even be able to find one that you can use, or, and you can just launch them as is, or you can make a copy and edit it for yourself if that's what you want to do. I see now they have a lot of them that you have to buy, which is different. But like I said, the free tools have always been more than enough for me. And another cool thing about Kahoot is that it isn't something that has to take like a whole class period. It's something that you can do as just a quick fun activity, or you can do one that's maybe a little more extended if you want to make it longer. If you're doing like a cumulative review or something like that, you might do a longer one. But I've always got nothing but positive feedback on Kahoot. Students love it.
Looks fun. I will have to try it. I
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that might be a lot for some of my students, because yeah, I'm on Zoom
I forgot to
every
show
day.
you. There's a way that
But
you can.
the very basic thing that I do, and so I'm almost at 1 year at LSS. And so when I was observing last November,
Yep.
this is weather, talking about the weather. So I'm gonna share the screen here. So in my warm up, I just read about the weather. And when I was at LSS observing, I don't remember which teacher or teachers it was. It was just the day, the temperature, nothing else. I expand upon that. So now my students, I can share the screen. Okay, there we go. We have like 3 or 4 pages of just weather vocabulary. And even at my level 1, they're like, oh, we love this teacher. They learn that vocabulary, they learn pronunciation. I mean, it's just I sometimes spend like an hour just reading over the weather, talking about the weather, and I have students from Sioux Falls all the way to Rapid City and Spearfish, and they're all over the place. And I constantly get this feedback from students like, oh, this is very good, teacher. Oh, we like this. So something as basic as just reading the weather forecast is good for students.
Yeah, and everybody like to talking about weather every day. The projection for the week, for the next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's very interesting practice. Thank you, David.
To John's comment, we also do talk a lot about food, but I have to tell my 7
Yes,
o'clock
food.
students, it gets a little bit dangerous because that's the last class of the day and we all get a little hungry.
Mhm.
So we talk about it for a minute and I say, okay, we have to stop, teacher's hungry.
Oh, food is always that topic. In my evening class, I have a chef in my
Oh.
evening class. So food is always a topic. Yeah.
Big topic.
So yeah, with the other week, Heather was talking about their students bringing food to class. I'm very jealous because I can't do that in my class. I'm at home. My students are at home. So Heather, you should bring us to your class.
I shall try.
Okay.
So I think it was last week, or week before, so it was last, I don't remember. Anyway, in the last week, I said I was walking through the office at night and I could hear so much laughing. And, you know, we have probably over 100 students online at night. And I could hear all this laughing coming throughout the building. And Susan does something. It wasn't just Susan, but Susan does something, because I was like, okay, so what's Susan's class doing that they're laughing at? Susan, talk about what you do on Wednesday nights.
On Wednesdays, we watch a video of Mr. Bean, and yes, and it's interactive. It's in English, so they have, like, we will learn gerunds and infinitives, and then they type in, or I type in, and they pick out which word is a gerund or which word is an infinitive. So it's something the students look forward to at the end of the week. Is we do our lesson first, and then we do Mr. Bean at the end, but it keeps them engaged. So, and they seem to like Mr. Bean. If you are familiar with Mr. Bean on BBC. So that's one thing that we do. But I need more help. I like the idea of Kahoot. I think that looks fantastic. Definitely keep the students engaged.
Up
in the,
Go ahead.
oh, go
Sorry,
ahead, John.
please. No, Debbie, I insist.
No, I was going to mention that up in the chat earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt the Kahoot conversation. Danette mentioned music and singing. Danette, did you want to talk about that, or can you only chat? Maybe you're someone that can't talk. Just chat. Okay, well, I'll just read what she wrote then. She said that music and singing, especially walking around the room to the beat while singing, if the group is open to this. So that's Danette's idea.
Debbie, can I piggyback off of Danette's idea? Last month was Hispanic, National Hispanic Month, and I supplement a lot of my, like my Burlington English with videos, ReadWorks videos, things like that. Well, anyway, we had read an article about different Hispanics that have contributed, you know, to our American culture. And at one point we were talking about Ricky Ricardo. So we watched an I Love Lucy video, and most of the people had never seen any of those because my students are younger, and you know, so they thought that was all funny. And then I put on the song La Bamba. Now that was at the beginning of our rock and roll era here in the United States. People who do not speak a lick of Spanish seemed to know all of the words to La Bamba, you know. So I put up the words to La Bamba and we were kind of translating back and forth. Well, we did that. And then one of my Vietnamese students asked me if I know the song Stand By Me. So I said, of course I know that song. So I pulled up Pandora and we all listened to it. My Vietnamese student was already singing it. So then I pulled up the words, and so we stopped and we read. And there was a lot of repetition in Stand By Me in the song. So we read it. And then at the end, we sung as a class, Stand By Me, with Hispanic accents, our English accents, Vietnamese accents. And it was absolutely wonderful. And it just kind of broke up what we were doing, broke up that monotony. And everybody was like, they were so energized after that. So I used music, the words and the music, to help with English. It was fun.
So one of my least favorite lessons to sub for has always been prepositions of place. And it seemed like Carla Neubauer, when I worked with her, always needed a sub for prepositions of place. But Stand By Me would be a perfect song to use for prepositions of place.
That reminds me of A&I, and I showed it in my math class, Ma and Pa Kettle, and the division in that. That was too much fun for our class. As long as they don't do it.
Sorry, Karen, I didn't mean to interrupt. I would like to just sort of reflect. So thus far, there have been, slick technological apps that Jeremy had showed. Kahoots. We talked about humor, and I think of Mr. Bean, but also, the application, whether it's infinitive verbs or gerunds, verbs as nouns. And then Becky was just talking about, prepositions and holidays, pop culture, weather. This is all terrific. And, I think too, where does TSTM, right, the teaching skills that move us framework, how can it help inform, whether we put this more into conversational practice with our English language learners, or application, or use it to springboard to GED test prep topics or content. But here's my question for you. I know this is on student engagement, so this might be the antithesis of it, but are there certain topics, and especially when you're dealing with resettled refugees and asylees, do you avoid talking about current events? Is that sort of the third rail, that you just avoid that for fear it could be triggering or polemic, or with diverse classrooms? Thoughts there?
I can say one thing, for my class, they usually bring it up themselves. I don't usually bring it up. If they bring it up and they want to talk about it, we do. And often it's just, sorry, teacher, I'm distracted today because I heard about the news in Palestine, or, oh, there was an earthquake in my home country. And then we say, oh, we're sorry to hear that. And if they want to talk more, we do. And that's that. I don't usually need to bring anything up. They usually bring it up themselves. And then I know they must want to talk about it because they brought it up.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing as Debbie. For me, I let it be student led, and I just try to be an active listener. I don't try to stop them from talking about those things, but I feel, I do have concerns about wanting to be sensitive and things like that. But if it's something that's student initiated, I guess I try to just be more of a moderator and active listener, so to speak.
Yeah, same thing with Debbie and Jeremy. Like, yeah, I've got students from Ukraine, from various places in Africa, all these war zone places. And that, yeah, like you said, students bring it up, watching the news about my country, these wars. I let them talk. The other students listen. They're empathetic, like, oh yeah, we understand, we know.
This might be a time for me to interject something that's maybe related and maybe not, but
Okay.
one thing I do in my class too is we did it last spring. I did it again just last week, and I'm thinking to make it at least twice a year, if not once a quarter. I had the South Dakota Voices for Peace community health worker and bilingual counselor from the Lewis and Clark Behavioral Center came and talked to our class about managing the stress of being a new immigrant, a newcomer to the country, and then giving out pamphlets with contact information for all health services in town, but particularly the mental health services, and talking about managing depression and whatever. So that is something that I always have available. The information packets are always available here, and they usually they're very interested in what the ladies have to say. So
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing, Debbie.
I think sometimes you have to be careful what you talk about. We've had situations where we've had people in a classroom from the same country, the same region, who are warring.
I was
So
just
you got to
thinking
be very careful of that.
yeah, we had a situation where a student had a differing opinion, and then it became a little bit heated. And so we had to do a little bit of intervention to keep that from escalating.
Something I'm also thinking about, because I've seen this in my citizenship class, for those of you who teach citizenship, you know that the N400 questions, some awful stuff in there. They ask you if you've ever committed genocide. They've asked you if you've ever committed torture. I know, it's awful. We go over that in class because it's what's on the form. And then students can be talking about things which we don't want to stop them from talking about if they need it, but they can inadvertently trigger themselves and others. I've had that happen in sit class a few times. So I guess it's a fine line if we don't want to say, hey, maybe, we don't want to silence them, but at the same time, we don't want them upsetting other people. And it's a weird fine line to walk. I don't have any solutions for that. It's just something I've noticed.
I was giving a Best Plus final test one night, and it's the picture of the house. And you may ask the question, you flip it around. The woman broke down in hysterics, and I don't handle emotion well, and I don't know, I didn't understand what triggered it. We're dealing with a language barrier, we're dealing with emotion. So you do have to always, because if something as simple as a picture of a house can trigger that, we have to be careful.
I had something similar happen once where I was giving a Best Plus, and the question about violence on TV, the person I was testing, she didn't necessarily break down, but she did start crying and telling me, that she really dislikes violence and things like that. And I listened, but yeah, I was a bit surprised, and I just tried to be sensitive and listen in that case. You can't really foresee something like that happening.
Yeah, even with Burlington, any mention of Russia will trigger students like, I'm not going to read that. I don't want to read that because it mentions Russia.
And we're fortunate enough to work with adults where we can say, okay, we can move on.
Well, I'm very proud. I can't, I mean, all the complexities and nuances and tragedies and trauma. I really commend you for maintaining a nurturing and safe classroom environment for all your learners. So kudos to you. Thank you.
I just wanted to read, Danette had put in a chat, has anyone used Secret Stories to help support phonics and reading? I hadn't, but I just wanted to put that out there for Danette. Doesn't look like anyone has, Danette, sorry.
Is it a curriculum, a website? What does it?
Can you explain it to us?
It does look like a more of a K-12, and maybe I'm not just on a cursory search here if I have the right link, Danette. I mean, it
Yeah,
just
she
reads
just
went to
shared
kinder.
the same one.
Oh, did she? Oh, I missed that. Sorry.
Right after you. And she said she's trying it out this fall. So I don't think I don't know that she has tried it yet, but she's trying it out this fall.
I believe our own South Dakota Secretary of Education was just in the paper last month talking about a renewed commitment to phonics. Did anyone see that in the paper for South Dakota K-12?
Amen.
I did too. I was so excited.
Oh, and
Someone-
guess what? I just learned today during conferences in the middle of the day, because why would you not have your conferences in the middle of the day when it's convenient for parents to go, that my school district is recommitting to actual writing skills.
Oh, yay.
And I know it's been lacking because I'm like, where's your pre-writing? Where's your brainstorming? Where's your this? Where's your that? And you're like, oh, we just write something and proof it. And I'm like, that's not writing. That's not the process. So very excited to hear that they're committing to that. And it's statewide, a huge issue in schools. The lack of ability to write at level.
Well, yeah, keep us apprised, Danette. If you have success with that, a lot of the software can be modified for adult learners, and a lot of our learners have kids, and we can approach it from a family literacy perspective. So I mean, I think there's so many possibilities, and I have a couple other items I'd like to address. You know, Jeremy had talked about the free version, and that's sufficed. But if you do find yourself in need of some software applications, go to your local leadership and ask them if there is room in the budget, in your local budget. And if there's not, you know, perhaps, you know, $9 a month. I think I can find that in our state leadership. But I'd also like to remind many of you are members of South Dakota Association for Lifelong Learning. And even a small scholarship application for $200-300 worth of software license for you to pilot some programming for your learners. I think those would be really exciting projects, low cost, potential high engagement, and then you could report out during Summer Summit or one of these T3s regarding the levels of success.
Good to know. Thank you, John. So earlier in the chat also, and it was mentioned this morning in our meeting, Bamboozle again, as a site, and I am not familiar with that one, and I don't know who mentioned it. I'm thinking it was Rebecca.
No, it was Jennifer. She's out.
Jennifer?
She's
Okay.
presenting it for the South Dakota Workforce and
Okay.
Conference.
I've used it.
Have you used Bamboozle?
Yeah.
What is Bamboozle?
It's also a game site. But it's similar to Kahoot. You can find existing games that might fit the needs of your students, or you can create your own. It's pretty easy to create one. The games on Bamboozle, the students don't sign into something like on Kahoot, so it's not directly interactive. But I use it, you know, similar to how I use the review games in Burlington English, if that makes sense. So I'll put them on teams. And one of the things that I've done with Bamboozle is I've done like a cumulative vocabulary type thing. Every once in a while we'll play it to kind of break up the monotony, or not the monotony, but you know, just to have a different little fun activity to review some of the vocabulary that we've learned along the way. I haven't used it a whole lot this year. I used it a lot more often last year, but I'm not quite sure why I haven't, because it's pretty fun. I can put I think Kim put the link to it in the chat earlier.
Becky Backus had sent me a chat too, and said she keeps freezing up. But she said that Kahoot and there's other apps, one called Funtivity, one called Heads Up, are built right into the Zoom platform. So if you're actually using Zoom for any of your classes, there are some of those interactivity apps built right in that makes it a little bit easier to use in those situations.
And I believe with the Kahoot, if you're using it through Zoom, you don't, you already kind of have the more encompassing version if you're using it through that, I believe. That's what I was told.
Really?
That's
Nice.
what I was told, but I haven't explored it.
I wanted to talk just a little bit. So a lot of my Lit 1 students, operating technology is the first, you know, they don't have it at all in their homes. So we've been pulling in, or I've been pulling in laptops into my Lit 1B, and they're learning the keyboard, how to type their name, how to type numbers, how to backspace, how to get to the enter, just all those little, you know, like techniques, so that if and when we get ready to do something on the screen, they'll have the knowledge to know of how to operate it themselves. Because it's something that we struggled with while we were all on Zoom, is that our lower levels struggled to get on unless their family members taught them repetitively what keys to touch to open, what numbers to push to join. So just trying to be preemptive with that, and giving them the skill set of being able to type on the laptop. And they're excited. They come every day. They want to type, even if they're typing the story we just read. They don't care.
So
They just want to.
Diana, are you walking them through, or are you also using some sort of typing tutorial where, you know, that too is gamified? I know I had my kids on free versions when they were little, but I didn't know if you were utilizing any of that functionality.
I haven't started a typing tutorial yet, but we might be getting there and ready for that now that they're aware of where the keys are and what the keys do. One of my Ukrainian students said all she ever did was cook in Ukraine. She never has been on a keyboard. She's excited.
Well,
So,
and think about cooking in the United States. A lot, so many jobs require some basic, even basic digital literacy. So, you know, you're doing a work face skills well.
Right. Yeah. And they're excited and they're coming back. I mean, like, the attendance is more steady, I should say, because they know they're going to get on the laptop. But, yeah.
With my students, I teach Zoom every day, all the time. Some students, most students, are just on their phone. And so trying to teach them how to use Zoom on their phone versus a laptop or a tablet. I don't even know where to begin.
It's a modality.
We troubleshoot it all day long.
And this is especially for those SLIFE students, level 0. You can use Google Translate But even then, it's,
Yeah, well, and to your point, David, and others, I know with the Digital Equity Act and some of the other funding sources in the American Connectivity Program, right? And trying to get them, our learners reduced. And I know there are all sorts of different programs out there to subsidize internet access. But I wonder too, at some point, can we be working with partners? Currently, TANF, right? Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. They've had some recalibration of their program priorities, and they've got an influx of money right now. So for many TANF or families on TANF, they're qualifying. If there's someone who doesn't have a GED or high school diploma, they're giving them laptops and without the expectation to return them. Now, I don't know how long that policy is going to last, but I'm just wondering in some instances, if we're going to have effective distance learning programs, how much better could the programming be if they at least had temporary access? And I know the headaches to trying to manage a lending library of laptops, but I'm just wondering if we can't connect them or invite people to, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anyone has thoughts on that.
We're fortunate enough that many of them have access to come into our building and are pretty comfortable doing that into our buildings. So that helps a lot with your troubleshooting. But in some of them, it's like, you got to get rid of some of your videos and before I can do anything to help you, because, but it's always going to be an issue. I know some of our staff are really good about checking out tablets and stuff like that in our program. We don't expect we're going to get them back, but they only last so long anyway.
Or
I would say that's the
partnerships.
one.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I agree with Kim about cleaning off. I mean, like when we were trying to put the Zoom app on their phones for them, we had to clean out a lot of apps that they never ever used, right?
Most of the time it's photos, like 500 photos of the same thing.
Right. Or and videos, and like they say, but even like teaching them the keyboard, I had one student, we were looking for her text messages. She did not realize that the little format for texting was the same idea of touching the letters, and she could actually create a text. Just mind-blowing for her that her phone had the capability to send a text and how to do it, right? Bringing that through.
Does anyone have a class texting, a primer on texting?
Not currently.
Or how to register your phone number with the National Federal Do Not Call list?
That would be really good for our students who get all kind of phone calls from strange sources.
And for
Scamming.
me too.
oh, yeah, I need that.
Does it really work though?
I don't know. I like to think it helps, but I don't know.
I say it helps, but it doesn't take it off 100%.
Because my car warranty has expired. A lot.
It only
That's good
stops
one,
the-
Karen. I relate.
It only stops the legitimate callers who are for real. It won't stop the scam callers. Because they're not following the rules to begin with. They're not going to follow the do not call law.
Most of those a lot of them aren't even in the United States, so they don't have to.
But it could be a springboard for those conversations about, when your students are at that level, .gov sites. And I really like the NRS portal site. They actually, like many of the federal sites, and if I can share my screen, let's see how effectively I could do that. Share. Right, where here it tells you, or you can read an official website of the US government, and then it gives you the .gov explanation and then reinforces the padlock indicator. But because I know a lot of you as family focused providers have been working, and just as digital literacy providers have been working for many years to help keep our students and their families safer in the digital realm.
It is National Digital Literacy Week too, by the way, in case you guys. I put about 8 million resources on our Facebook page, so if anybody wants any, there's a whole bunch of them.
Can I kind of come back to the original question about engagement? So this month we've been working with weather in our classes, and in my kind of intermediate level classes, we've been checking our weather apps every day, which is actually quite engaging because none of the weather apps on their phones agree with each other. So today we had anywhere from 58 degrees to 54 degrees. So we had to kind of decide what number we wanted to write on our calendar. And then yesterday, since we've been talking about digital literacy, yesterday we actually learned how to go on our apps and find the forecast, which seems easy, but isn't always easy because all the apps are a little bit different. And we had to figure out, okay, on my phone, teacher, where do I push to find the 10-day forecast? And it was actually quite engaging and still use technology, and students really liked it. So I thought I'd throw that out there.
Heather, how do you, when you're dealing with those lessons, are you using what do you call it? Projector to show one phone, or are you going person to person and helping them navigate their particular app?
What I ended up doing was I used my computer and projected the computer and showed them what website I would use. And we discussed that, and we had gone through like screenshots of several different ones. And then we looked up different countries online together, and then they transferred that to their own phones and found their own countries, and then figured out what the weather was that day and what the weather would be for the next week. So both, in answer to your question.
So what I do sometimes if I'm showing them how to do something on the phone, we have these document cameras at LSS. I'm sure you guys have them too. I put my phone under the camera. It's not the same, of course, because all phones are different. I have an Android, they have iPhones, and even between, and they're always a little bit different, but it's, I'd say, more accurate to what they're going to be seeing than it would be on a computer.
I've done the same thing, Kate, where I show, and sometimes it's hard to get your phone to actually show up on the document cam, but that's what I've done too, to kind of make them more comfortable with, especially when I want them to be able to switch like back and forth between Zoom and another app like Burlington English.
And the other thing I'd like to say, these comments I'm seeing in the comment section about the library. Funny enough, we are doing that coming up this week. We're going to take a group of students on Tuesday and Wednesday. And yeah, we're doing just that. They get a tour, and then they get to sign up for their library cards, and they get a little free time to look around, find a good book. So we've all been in our classes doing different activities to prep them up for that. I taught my high level students a little trick the other night about finding a good level book for them. Tonight, we're going to be reviewing question words so that they can make their own questions they have for the librarians, like how long is my card good for? And, what branch is closest to me? So then the idea, fingers crossed, they ask the librarians, and then we have a follow-up next week. And I say, so what did you learn?
Sure.
And lots of different fun activities for that. So they're excited. I'm excited. Hopefully it's going to be good.
Definitely, yes, definitely yes. That we like to do with our students too. Nice, very nice.
Well, and I think that brings up one of the things that I mentioned every time we talk about these kinds of things, whether you're doing a field trip or you're talking about a new piece of technology, we have to remember that we're teaching, we're doing some pre-teaching. We have to pre-teach the technology before we expect the students to use the technology. We have to pre-teach the purpose for the field trip and what we hope to learn, like Kate said, and then do some follow-up after that activity. There's so much explicit instruction that has to happen on so many different aspects of what we're doing with our students. And it's sometimes we would like to jump to the fun part, but it always goes much better if we stop and take the time to do all the steps along the way.
Well, it looks like we have 2 minutes left. Does anybody else have anything they want to share with the group? Doesn't have to be on this topic. It could be announcements, anything.
I would just like to share that I have an awesome team member who graciously decided to host this event after a little prompting. So good job, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
I think Denise is trying to
Thank
say she
you.
was voluntold.
She did good. Don't forget tape training tomorrow morning.
Oh, yes, that's a good announcement. Very excited for that. We do have a directors meeting okay, I was just going to remind everybody, teachers here, that we do have a directors meeting coming up November 1st and 2nd, right? Okay.
Yep, correct.
And so if you have questions, if you would like, you've had discussions with your directors on, remind them to bring them to the directors meeting, because they're going to try and stump us old people who've been doing this for 30 years. So we encourage those. Okay. Laura's not 30 years. I'm 30 years. You got to be close though, right?
22, 23. I'm not that bad.
I think my uncle Andy just had his 45th annual 27th birthday, something like that.
So Kim, I'm so sorry. I was just gonna mention that I just got back in from out of state, but did have information and an invitation if there are staff in South Dakota that are interested in participating in the Low Literacy Study Circle. They can apply and be on the waiting list for that. And if someone is interested, I have a link. So if you work with people who are lower literacy, have interest in a really incredible study circle opportunity, just let me know.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. And if you have topics you'd like to discuss or ask to bring people to the T3s, please let John or Laura or Becky or any of us know. And we will work our due diligence to bring that to you. So thank you. You all have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Great discussions. Take care.